basketball. Playoffs last night. Heat, Celtics, Jason Tatum, the C's, Tyler Hero, the Heat. Game 2, Celtics up 1-0. We picked this game up in the first quarter, and it was the C's rolling. Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, back and forth. Hey, Tatum had 28 in this game, legs.
Yeah, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, for the most part, had pretty good numbers. But it wasn't a Celtics-style game, even though Jaylen Brown had this run at the end of the half.
No Jimmy Butler. Heat needed a hero. They got one in Tyler Hero. Boy, he led the Heat on a 10-0 run, 14 dimes in this one.
Not a traditional point guard. He's a combo guard, but he played like a true point guard in this game, organized their offense, gave them scoring, but more importantly, assisted and facilitated their offense.
He certainly set the table just like this. Jaime Jaquez for 3. He had 14 in the starting lineup.
It was everybody. I felt like checking in the game with all these threes flying. They made 23 of them. Everybody on their roster, it felt like knocked down open shots when they had an opportunity.
Caleb Martin knocks down. Then Tyler Hero does it himself. He had 23, 14 assists. He leads them to a victory, 111-101. So now that this series is all tied up at 1 game apiece, your biggest takeaway when you see how the Heat took game 2 in Boston?
First of all the credit in the world to Eric Spoelstra for getting this team mentally ready to believe first. You know, you're talking about playing the 1 seed that won 64 games. You also don't have Jimmy Butler. You go in there down 0-1. You got blasted in the first game, and you come out with this level of belief and certainty the way you operated offensively. I just thought it was an outrageous shooting performance. That's really what it comes down to. Guys ready to toe up shots and knock them down. Now, I do think Boston contributed to it. I think they had an overreaction to penetration, and then the closeouts were too long. You're going to see an adjustment in game 3. We're going to stay a little bit closer to those shooters and force guys to score in the paint. So I think Miami could have a problem doing that. And I think Boston was a little bit too ISO heavy offensively, so they contributed to it. But I'm going to give most of the credit in this to the Heat. It's just more about what they did, I think, than what the Celtics didn't do.
I think sometimes we underestimate how good of a coach Eric Spoelstra is. You talk about one of the best there. So based off of that, was that a bad sign, bad game, you think, for the season?
I think it's, well, listen, we're going to find out. I think you can only answer that question in the context of what happens next. Because if you are the real deal, you're going to turn this around and go right into Miami and win game 3 before any real vulnerability starts to set in and doubt starts to set in. You won 64 games. You had a 14-game lead on the rest of the conference. You're playing an 8 seed. If you're the Boston Celtics, look, things like this can happen in the series, particularly with a team and an organization with this kind of pride and a coach like Eric Spoelstra. But you've got to turn right back around and flip the script when you go into Miami. You go down 2-1. This thing could linger into a 7-game series, and I think a lot of doubt starts to set in internally. Let's see what their response is. That will be a better answer to the question you just asked me.
Biggest adjustment then for the Celtics.
Couple things. I think first of all, they've got to get out of the ISO heavy basketball. That's not them at their best. They're best when they get downhill on dribble drive. They kick it, they make you chase it, and they've got so much three-point shooting. This is the most prolific three-point shooting team in the league in terms of attempts and makes. That wasn't their game in game 2. This was Miami really doing it to them. So I think get away from the ISOs, and I think you've got to do something with Kristaps Porzingis to take advantage of these switches. He was a complete non-factor in this game. Reason you go out and get Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis is for the playoff stretch, right? Because you've got too much versatility. Neither of those guys really had any impact in this game offensively, but particularly Porzingis. If the Heat are going to switch all these ball screens, you've got to take advantage of that by getting into the mid-post and making them pay for playing smaller guys on it.
All right, we'll see if they make those kind of changes. We'll talk a little bit more about the NBA playoffs as well. But coming up,
your age is just a number, but OKC Thunder struck the Pels last night in game 2. And he's young, but wise in his fashion. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, I need that coat ASAP. They were looking to take a 2-0 series lead here against the Pels. Chet Holmgren was taking care of business in the first, knocking down 3 threes, shooting a perfect 5 for 5 from the field for 15 points. He's a first rookie with that 100% field goal in a playoff quarter in the last 25 years. We're going to take it to the second. Thunder still leading 43-27. Aaron Wiggins drives. CJ McCollum on the floor. The fancy handle. Dishes to Jalen Williams. Drives and gives it back to Wiggins for the layup. The Thunder bench just on fire. They're loving it. And they're leading 58-45. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander steps back. He's fashionable on the court too. Buries the 3. That's one of 10 made three-pointers in the first half for the Thunder. OKC had 10 threes in all of game one. They were leading 63-50 at the half. SGA here in the third, keeping the trend with the threes. Thunder lead by 21. They were up by 16, 20 seconds to go in the third. SGA drives, lays it up and in. 33 points for him on the game. That's a career high in playoffs for SGA. Cason Wallace gets the ball in corner, pumps, drives, finds Williams. Thunder win easily, 124-92. David?
Yeah, Christina, we got Tim Legler here to talk about it. I'm not going to call you old legs, but I do want to talk about the young legs of the Thunder because they're young and they're really good. They're the one seed. What have you seen so far, just through a couple games of the playoffs, that make you think, okay, maybe OKC can do some things here?
Well, I think, David, I saw last night a lot of the same things I watched all season, which is the connection between their starters. It's really special. I think it's the second best we have in this league besides the Denver Nuggets with the core continuity. And it's built around the star offensive talent of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, but everybody else stays in their lane. I know it's a young team, but they play with a greater maturity level than their age would indicate. And they have a second player that's an emerging star in Jalen Williams. So they've got that second guy, and then everybody else does what they're asked to do at a really high level. If they have one area of concern, they are a little bit small up front. They run into some of those bigger front lines. It could be a little bit of a problem on the glass or defending the post, which is why I think a matchup with Denver down the road could be problematic. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Right now, you saw last night a team that can hum at that level, and when they play that way offensively, there are very few teams in this league that can slow them down because their movement, the player and ball movement on the offensive end of the floor is really special, and New Orleans got a taste of it last night.
Fun to watch. Now they're up 2-0 as the series swings to New Orleans. Meanwhile, legs in Boston, the Heat, they just steal one last night, and they do it over and over again. Erik Spoelstra, a great coach. He's undermanned. He's missing a couple guys, and yet they come away with a win against Boston. What stood out to you about that performance last night?
Well, I've often said if you wanted to give me one coach to coach any group of guys that you wanted to throw together, including down at the health club later this afternoon, I'm taking Erik Spoelstra as the guy I want to coach that game. And you saw it why last night. Just the fact that he gets them to believe based on their situation. You're playing a team that won 64 games. You're on the road. You don't have Jimmy Butler. And yet you come out and you play with this level of confidence and just certainty with the way they played offensively. Look, Boston contributed to it, but I'm not going to chalk this as much up to the Boston Celtics as I am to the Heat. This is an outrageous shooting performance. These are guys stepping into shots with confidence. They made every extra pass in every situation that they had to get a clean look. And then Tyler Hero, to me, was the guy that was just incredible last night because this is a team that doesn't typically play with a traditional point guard. Tyler Hero is more of a combo guard, but he played like a point guard last night. 14 assists. He made 6 threes himself, David. He assisted on 10 others. So that's 48 points from the three-point line alone that Tyler Hero accounted for. I thought his ball handling, his decision-making, everything was exceptional last night. And the Miami Heat came in there, and they got a game they had to have to make this